If you want to understand who is winning the quiet war for the American checkbook, do not look at Wall Street. Look at a map of Northeast Ohio. Right now, in the post-industrial valleys of the Rust Belt, the most profitable fast food machine in history is launching a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar territorial invasion. Chick-fil-A is quietly planning to drop up to 30 new locations across the state of Ohio, with the first spearheads landing this fall in Alliance and North Canton. On paper, it looks like a standard corporate expansion. In reality, it is a hyper-aggressive declaration of war. Ohio is not just another state on a corporate checklist. It is the geographic cradle of American fast food, the historic proving ground where Wendy's was born, where Arby's was founded, and where corporate empires test whether a brand can survive the brutal, budget-conscious realities of the American heartland. For decades, the rule of fast food expansion was simple. You conquer the high-income suburbs, you saturate the Sun Belt, and you leave the legacy industrial towns to the cheap, greasy burger chains that have held those corners since the 1970s. But Chick-fil-A is ripping up that playbook. They are marching directly into the territory of legacy rivals at a time when the average consumer is stretched to an absolute breaking point. But there is a massive structural paradox at the heart of this Midwestern blitzkrieg, one that corporate press releases completely ignore, but the company's internal metrics reveal as an incredibly dangerous gamble. Chick-fil-A's entire empire is built on a radical, highly delicate business model that defies the laws of modern capitalism. Unlike McDonald's or Subway, where wealthy, hands-off investors can buy up dozens of locations and run them via remote corporate offices, Chick-fil-A famously limits its franchise partners, whom they call operators, to just one single location. They select these operators through a legendary grueling process with an acceptance rate of less than 1%. It is statistically harder to get a Chick-fil-A franchise than it is to get into Harvard Business School. These operators are not investors, they are hands-on, community-entrenched managers who are required to be in the store, working the drive-thru, and policing the legendary customer service standards that define the brand. This hyper-focus model is the sole reason why Chick-fil-A generates an average of over $9 million per store annually, more than double what a typical McDonald's ma. Despite being closed every single Sunday, it is a masterpiece of operational control. But here is the geographic and economic trap. When you build a multi-billion-dollar empire based on hyper-selective, single-unit human management, how do you suddenly open 30 massive, high-throughput locations in a single Midwestern state without diluting the very magic that makes you profitable? You cannot simply buy your way into 30 prime corners in Alliance and North Canton. You have to find, train, and deploy 30 flawless, hyper-dedicated local operators who are willing to pledge their professional lives to a single chicken shop. In a region currently facing one of the tightest labor shortages in a generation, worse yet, this sudden, desperate sprint into Ohio isn't just about finding new customers. There is a hidden, highly cynical motive behind this timing. The brand is racing against an impending demographic and supply chain bottleneck in its southern strongholds, forcing them to colonize the industrial north before their core markets reach absolute saturation. They are running out of room, and Ohio is the chosen battleground where they must prove they can conquer the legacy Rust Belt. If they succeed, they will permanently rewrite the rules of quick-service dining, proving that high-end hospitality can scale indefinitely even in the hardest-hit economic corridors of the Midwest. But if they fail, if this rapid 30-store land grab fractures their fragile single-unit operator model, it will expose a structural ceiling to Chick-fil-A's growth that could trigger a cascading decline across their entire national network. The battle for Northeast Ohio is not about chicken. It is a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar stress test of a business model that has never been forced to scale this fast, in a place this tough. And the first cracks are already starting to show in places most analysts are completely ignoring. To understand how Chick-fil-A arrived at this massive Midwestern expansion, we have to look past the modern drive-thru queues and examine a geographic trap that has been quietly tightening around the fast food industry for the last 40 years. The battlefield is Ohio, a state that has historically functioned as the undisputed proving ground of corporate fast food. If you want to build a national restaurant empire in America, You do not start in New York or Los Angeles. You start here, in the industrial heartland, where the economic margins are razor-thin and the consumers are famously unforgiving. Historically, Ohio is the birthplace of the industry's fiercest competitors. Dave Thomas opened the very first Wendy's in downtown Columbus in 1969, building an empire on fresh, never-frozen beef and a highly efficient supply chain. Just 5 years earlier, in 1964, Forrest and Leroy Raffel founded Arby's in Boardman, Ohio, targeting a blue-collar demographic that wanted an alternative to the standard burger. For decades, these legacy brands held an iron grip on the Midwestern market, utilizing Ohio's dense interstate corridors, Interstate 70, Interstate 70, and Interstate 80, to establish a near-floor distribution network, Chick-fil-A. By contrast, spent its formative decades playing a completely different geographical game. Founded by S. Truett Cathy in Atlanta, Georgia, the brand was built strictly within the warm, culturally receptive confines of the American South. The company's initial expansion strategy was slow, deliberate, and bound to suburban shopping malls. When they finally crossed the Mason-Dixon line to open their very first Ohio location in a Cleveland mall in 1979, it was treated as a minor regional experiment. For the next 30 years, the brand slowly built up a footprint of roughly 80 Ohio locations, mostly concentrated in high-income suburban pockets around Columbus and Cincinnati. But by the mid-2020s, the geographic math changed permanently. In August of 2025, Chick-fil-A corporate headquarters issued a major announcement that caught industry analysts completely off guard. The company revealed a massive coordinated plan to build 25 to 30 new restaurants across Ohio by the end of 2027. The spearhead of this aggressive push was aimed directly at Northeast Ohio, with immediate groundbreaking scheduled in Stark County, specifically along State Street in Alliance and west of North Main Street in North Canton. These are not the affluent, white-collar suburbs of Cincinnati or Columbus. These are historic, industrial, blue-collar communities that have spent the last 3 decades weathering manufacturing declines and economic restructuring. This is the geographic trap. For 40 years, Chick-fil-A's operational model relied on a highly specific economic environment. Their premium pricing, where a basic chicken sandwich meal easily clears $11, was supported by affluent suburban families who valued speed and premium customer service. But the southern suburban markets that fueled the chain's explosive growth for 2 decades are officially saturated. In cities like Atlanta, Charlotte, and Dallas, you can barely drive 3 miles without hitting a Chick-fil-A drive-thru. To maintain the compounding growth rates that their private corporate structure demands, they are forced to expand northward into territory where the median household income is significantly lower, and where legacy brands like Wendy's and McDonald's have spent 50 years perfecting the art of the ultra-cheap value meal. This creates a brutal systemic clash of economic interests. When Chick-fil-A moves into Northeast Ohio cities like Alliance, Stowe, Streetsboro, and New Philadelphia, they are entering a direct turf war with established fast food giants that are already struggling to maintain their own market share. The state's quick service market is not growing. The population of Ohio has remained largely stagnant for a decade, hovering just under 12 million residents. That means every single dollar Chick-fil-A captures in Stark County must be actively stolen from an existing Wendy's, McDonald's, or Raising Cane's down the street. Worse yet, this expansion is colliding with a massive localized labor crisis. According to state employment reports, the food service industry in Ohio has faced an unprecedented staffing bottleneck since the early 2020s. To operate a single high-throughput Chick-fil-A location requires anywhere from 80 to 120 employees, working in highly synchronized, high-stress environments. By launching up to 30 new locations simultaneously, Chick-fil-A is attempting to recruit upwards of 3,000 new workers in a state where the labor participation rate has steadily lagged behind the national average. The company is attempting to solve this labor bottleneck by offering starting wage between $12 and $16 an hour at locations like North Canton, along with comprehensive benefits packages including health insurance and 401k matching. On paper, this looks like a win for local workers. In reality, it is a predatory labor play designed to starve surrounding competitors of talent. Local independent restaurants and smaller regional franchises simply do not have the capital margins to compete with Chick-fil-A's corporate-backed wage structures. The historical irony here is thick. Truett Cathy built this brand on the principle of slow organic growth, famously stating that he would rather be better than bigger. For decades, that philosophy protected the brand from the overexpansion traps that ruined competitors like Boston Market and Subway. But today, the pressures of modern supply chain economics and regional market saturation have forced the Cathy family to abandon that classic caution. They are launching a rapid, capital-intensive invasion of the Rust Belt, gambling that their premium brand equity can survive the harsh, price-sensitive realities of a Midwestern economic landscape that has broken some of the strongest retail concepts in American history. The geographic trap is set, the dirt is turning in Alliance and North Canton, and the corporate giants of the fast food world are bracing for a head-on collision. If you want to see what happens when the irresistible force of Chick-fil-A's drive-through volume collides with the immovable object of local municipal infrastructure, look no further than Toledo, Ohio. This is not a hypothetical business school case study. It is a multi-million-dollar civil conflict played out in the parking lots of the Midwest. In Lucas County Common Pleas Court, a local businessman named Mario Kesey, who owned a neighboring retail plaza, filed a landmark lawsuit against a newly built Chick-fil-A on Secor Road. The issue was not the food, it was the gridlock. The lawsuit alleged that during peak lunch and dinner rushes, the line of idling cars waiting to buy chicken regularly backed up so far that it completely blocked the entrance to adjacent businesses, trapping customers in their parking spaces and creating what neighboring managers described as an actively dangerous traffic environment. Local business owners, including the general manager of Bulk Beverage, reported that the line stacked directly in front of their storefronts, blocking access and driving away customers who simply gave up rather than navigating the automotive maze. The lawsuit did not even ask for financial damages, it simply begged the court to force Chick-fil-A to fix the operational spillover of its own success. WTOL Show 2
is the hidden reality of the Chick-fil-A expansion model.
The brand's drive-through lanes are designed like high-speed assembly lines. But the public roads and private parking lots of Ohio were never built to handle the sheer physical footprint of 100 cars trying to turn left at the same time. This exact infrastructure friction is what led the City Council of North Canton, Ohio, to take preemptive legislative action. In late 2021, as national chains began eyeing the city's commercial corridors, local officials quietly passed Ordinance No. 7221. This ordinance specifically amended the city's codified zoning rules for the Main Street South zoning district, converting drive-through facilities from a permitted use to a strictly regulated conditional use. This was not a random administrative change. It was a desperate defensive maneuver. By making drive-thrus a conditional use, North Canton gave its planning commission the legal authority to reject or heavily modify site plans that threatened to choke local thoroughfares like Main Street with corporate traffic. Local governments are starting to realize that the tax revenue generated by a new fast food location is quickly offset by the municipal cost of managing traffic jams, repaving damaged access roads, and dispatching police to handle parking lot fender benders. North Canton. But the physical gridlock outside the restaurant is only half the battle. Inside the dining room, a completely different kind of operational breakdown is taking place. Driven by a brutal clash between corporate policy and local labor realities, take the Chick-fil-A located at the intersection of East Stroop and Schroyer Roads in Kettering, Ohio. In the mid-2020s, this location made national headlines when its local operator implemented a highly controversial teen chaperone policy. The rule was blunt. Anyone 17 years of age or under was banned from dining inside the restaurant unless accompanied by a parent, guardian, or an adult over the age of 21. Unaccompanied minors were permitted to order food to go, but they were immediately ordered to leave the premises. While the policy triggered massive outrage on local social media, the operator's decision highlighted a severe systemic crisis facing Midwestern fast food locations. High-throughput suburban restaurants have become de facto after-school youth centers, but with starting staff consisting primarily of young, inexperienced workers. Operators simply do not have the security infrastructure or managerial capacity to handle large, unruly crowds of teenagers while maintaining a premium, family-friendly dining environment. Fox Business Issue 03. This is where the polished veneer of Chick-fil-A's corporate branding begins to crack. To shield themselves from the negative publicity of zoning battles and labor disputes, the corporate offices in Atlanta deploy highly sophisticated public relations campaigns alongside their regional developments. When announcing the grand opening of the new Alliance location at 2381 West State Street, the company made sure to pair the press release with a $25,000 donation to the Akron Canton Regional Food Bank. They heavily promoted their Shared Table program, which redirects surplus food from the kitchen to local non-profit organizations. Chick-fil-A's philanthropic gestures are calculated investments. By embedding themselves into the local charitable landscape of Northeast Ohio, the brand builds immediate, powerful goodwill with local politicians and community leaders. It becomes incredibly difficult for a city council member or zoning commissioner to vote against a new drive-through lane when that same company is actively funding the local food bank and sponsoring youth sports leagues. But behind the charitable donations and the polite corporate slogans lies a highly demanding supply chain apparatus that is currently being stretched to its absolute limit. Chick-fil-A does not rely on broadline food distributors like US Foods or Sysco in the same way its competitors do. Instead, they utilize a tightly controlled, proprietary distribution network to ensure that every single chicken breast meets their exact freshness and safety standards. As they construct 30 new high-volume locations across Ohio, they are forcing their Midwestern distribution hubs to absorb an immense logistical load. If a single delivery truck is delayed on Interstate 80, or if a supplier in their closed farming network fails a safety audit, multiple locations across Stark County could run out of core ingredients within hours. This is the ultimate paradox of Chick-fil-A's Ohio invasion. They are attempting to scale an artisanal, high-touch, single-operator business model at the speed of a global corporate